So perfect. While we're waiting for people to join, I will quickly say welcome to everyone. So this is our series Coffee Breaks, presented by My G-Work. If this is your first coffee break, massive welcome to you. This is a session where we sit down and talk to different LGBTQ plus campaigners, activists, musicians, to talk about some of the wonderful change that is being made in society. It's a place to ask questions and to learn, so please do pop your questions in the Q&A as we go along, because there will be time to get to them at the end. So today we're talking to the absolutely amazing Andrea. I'm so excited. If you're not familiar with them, they are a pop sensation, musician, human rights advocate, all-round amazing human. So we're very, very excited for that. Firstly, I'll very quickly introduce myself and we'll just kick off with it, really. So my name's Zoe. I'm the customer success manager at My G-Work. If it's your first time interacting with My G-Work, then we are an LGBTQ plus business community. So whether you are an LGBTQ plus leader at the top of your career or a student or graduate about to enter the workforce, as long as you believe in workplace equality, we are a space and a platform for you. This is one of the many amazing events that we do offer. So please do go on and check out the rest of our events on our website. We have loads coming up this month. And if you haven't already, make sure you go on and create a profile on our website. It's free to do, and you can connect with like-minded individuals. My email address is on the screen, so please do reach out to me if you'd like, whether that's something related to today's event or something else entirely. It's always lovely to hear from people, so do reach out to us. And without further ado, I will introduce our very, very lovely guest, Andrea. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey Zoe, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. People might not know, but me and Zoe go back in time actually, because Zoe's got an incredible brand that she does, which I absolutely love. And we got in touch back then, and then it's a pleasure to be on this platform talking about these things with you.
Yes, we've been friends for a little while now, so it's really exciting to get to work with you with My G-Work in this capacity as well. But on that, I've also just been a fan of your music for a long time, so any chance to chat to you, and I will always put my hand up and volunteer to do it. So thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have you on today. I don't know if you maybe just give everyone a little bit of an introduction about yourself, just to begin with, and we'll jump into it.
Sure thing. So I'm Andrea Di Giovanni, and I am a singer-songwriter. I'm based in London. I mainly do contemporary pop music. So far, I've released a couple of EPs, and I've been dropping singles up until my debut release, which is going to be early 2021, probably January. I can't say much about it, but this is the kind of release things. And I'm also a human rights advocate in the sense that I speak up on things that I feel needs highlighting, and I'm a huge massive advocate for giving a platform to voices who are not heard. So I'll try as much as I can to also foster a community within the DIY realm of things. So I created a playlist called New Music Friday, the DIY Edit, that I curate every Friday to champion the best DIY releases across the globe.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. And you grew up in Italy, so let's start perhaps right at the beginning. Can you tell us a bit about kind of what it was like being a young Andrea and kind of your childhood and upbringing in Italy?
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to make it too stereotypical in the sense that obviously you can imagine that, Italy, Rome specifically, which is where I was born, it's a very Catholic country, and as a kind of like a pre-note, Catholicism is very ingrained within our culture. So it's something that we all kind of 90% of us tend to grow up with. But my childhood was thoroughly good up until, I guess, I started to kind of doing those things that were deemed different from the norm, such as playing with dolls, not liking playing sports, but more being into theater, dancing and singing. And since I was a child, though, I guess I felt very free to express those things up until a point where I guess we enter society as teenagers, don't we? So kind of starting to meet the first resistance going to school, a little bit of bullying sadly occurred, and I was always kind of very different different from all the other kids. I liked attention, but I was able to get people attention without doing much, really. It was just whatever I had inside in my persona. But it wasn't obviously easy because also of the bullying to get to terms with that. So after a while, you internalize a lot of the shame that is thrown at people who are diverse. So you're doing things that are not supposed to be for boys, or like, why are you doing these things? People are questioning you. And, you know, as a teenager welcoming society, I don't think that you're equipped with enough tools. I mean, at the time, I think today is slightly different, but at the time I wasn't equipped with the tools to deal with that. So I was just like, why are people being so mad for me just being myself? And only later on I understood why. So that was that. And while obviously this was happening, I find my own ways to kind of like let out the feelings that I have inside, and that's where kind of music takes a major step in. I started doing piano when I was like 3 years old, so I was like this cute little toddler going to music lessons, but it was my happiest time of the day. I remember like loving it so much. And then around like 8, 9 years old, I started to singing as a hobby. It's actually because I was originally diagnosed with some like nodules on my vocal folds, and it was told medically, which is please don't do that if you do. I was told to start singing, which obviously we know now is not really the safest thing to do if you do have nodules, so go get yourself checked if you do have one. But that's how it kind of like started, and it became as a hobby. Started singing a couple of times like during the week. And then I guess around like 16, 17, I realized, wow, like when I sing, people actually hear me on many different like levels, which I was like, I've got some power here. So what can I do now to kind of like elevate this? And so after graduating and doing high school, I had a little experience in a TV show in Italy, which was really fun. And after that experience, though, I've kind of realized that there was much more to me, and I felt like Italy wouldn't be the perfect platform for me to thrive on, just because of the nature of how the music industry is over there, just about the nature of how it's like, I mean, queer people, they were already quite marginalized. So as an openly queer person, although I wasn't super openly queer at the time, it's kind of complicated. And also I was 19, so I was just like, I think there's more to this and I can learn more. I just felt like after doing such like a ego boosting experience such as the TV show, I kind of wanted to kind of strip it all down and start fresh somewhere else. And that's why literally from a week to another, it was October 2013, I decided to move here and started uni. And I came here alone. I have only one family member who lived close to me, but that was it. So I kind of like completely started from zero. And then after that, I studied at BIM London, where I graduated in 2017. And while I was at BIM, I was releasing music at the same time. And it was like a very fun thing for me to do, because in my head, what I thought is this is a safe space for me to release music. And even if I'm not happy with the results or I'm not getting where I want to get, I still can go to uni. I still have my peers and my pals to talk to. So you know, I couldn't get in my head too much if I was like releasing things on my own. And also I could just simply learn and get feedback from teachers on how I did things. So what we were studying, I was actually doing. And then ever since, I just like steadily released music over the years, and kind of like getting more into what is my sexuality, and then later on gender identity. And that kind of like brings me to where I am today.
Wow, what a journey.
It was.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it's interesting how you say as a child that you didn't have those concepts of boys should play with this, girls should play with that, until you were introduced to kind of school, and the rest of kind of those societal norms always seem to hit us in the face.
Right.
I do hope having more representation and role models such as yourself in the music industry, that we can kind of hopefully change that for children growing up now or growing up in the years to come. But there's still a lot more progress that needs
Oh,
to
absolutely.
and what was kind of coming out to your friends and family then, if they're, because they're most of your family in Rome?
So my mom is in Rome with my younger sister and older brother, and instead my dad is in Beijing at the moment. So he moved there for work reasons, and that's where he's going to be probably for the next 4 to 5 years. And yeah, I mean, my coming out was like it's always like a very weird experience for me, because like the idea of coming out, it's kind of weird. It weirds me out in a way, because realistically, when I say coming out, it's always like you coming to terms with it yourself, more so than being it like an external type of thing. But the reaction has been incredibly positive ever since. I guess there was that moment where both of my parents were like, about time, girl, like we been new. And it was, it took a lot of time for me to process that, because that's what I said, like when I moved here at 19, I could still see how perhaps all the internalized shame was making me judge myself and was holding myself back more so than society. Because actually everybody around me, especially at uni, they were like, girl, like we kind of all pretty do, and it seems obvious for us. But I'm just like, obviously, like this, I get that, but like it wasn't obvious for me. And for me to kind of come to terms with it, it was a long, painful journey. I had sexual experience with girls. I had many girlfriends before that. And then there was kind of like a moment where I also like wrote a song about it, which I think is called like Our Own Way, which is, you can find on Spotify. You can stream it there. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of like, is it enough? Like there's no way for me to keep on doing this act. Like I just need to embrace who I am. And the moment I start doing that, like all this kind of like wall and barriers that I created across the years and that shame kind of riddled within, they all fell down. And finally I was able to kind of feel more vulnerable, and also like understand that there was nothing wrong. This is who I am. And like looking back, I would never go back, because I was taming myself so much, taming so much of who I really am. And just because I internalized so much shame, because since I grew up, I've been told that, queer people are not good, queer people are deemed to go to hell, you've got to pray the gay away, all that type of stuff. So after that moment, though, like everything started to unravel. And it started as simply as like painting my nails, applying a little bit of makeup, going a bit more extravagant with clothing. And I guess that was the getaway also for my gender identity, which came later on. I think it was just a couple of years ago, after seeing a bunch of people that they were questioning, the binary identification system. I got to realize, whoa, there's something that it feels more me. And that's where I kind of started identifying as gender fluid. So gender fluid pretty much is everything within the gender spectrum, from man to woman, everything in between. And I see myself as a shapeshifter, and I think that's what I am. Like I always say this, like I see myself as gray matter. I can model and shape and turn and do many different things, and it's hard to pinpoint me, and it's hard on purpose, because I don't want you to be able to pinpoint me. Like I'm everything and nothing. And I think that there's so much power within that, because by doing so, I'm able every day to express who I am, from masculine to feminine to crossover and more. And it just feels so nice, because I feel very in touch with myself.
I think that's beautiful. So beautifully put. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. It is interesting how you touch on that internalized shame that I think we don't speak about enough. We talk about the LGBT phobic kind of attitudes in the society around us and how that manifests, but that internalized shame that I think a lot of people can relate to, that we do have to accept ourselves, and that is kind of a part of our coming out too, and a really important part. But that vulnerability and the authenticity that I think you have in yourself really comes across in your music as well. I think it is kind of what makes your music shine so bright.
Oh, thank you so much.
You can hear it in there. And your music career really has kind of flourished over the last few years. I was hoping you'd be able to tell us a few of the kind of highlights from that.
I mean, there's many things. It's always hard to kind of like pinpoint one thing, because the most beautiful thing when you're DIY, when you're independent, is the grind is harsh. And there's few things that can like derail your mental health from time to time. But when you start getting into things, and no matter how big they are, it really doesn't matter how big they are, but when you start, you see that you're making things happen with your music, I think there's no bigger rewards than that. But if I have to pick a few moments, one for sure is playing main stage at Pride in London. I mean, like that was iconic. I had a full Pierrot inspired costume. I had dancers, and just I've been wanting to be on that stage for like the past 3 years before that moment. And it was like a struggle to get there through the competition, but I was resilient, and I was like, I will be there. Like, if it's not this year, the next one or the next. Like, I will make it there. So definitely playing like main stage at Pride was like a huge, huge, huge moment. And also Birmingham Pride, it was like really, really, really lovely. Got the chance to meet many other artists, such as like Hold Me Loop and others, which was like Lucy Whitaker. I think that she goes now with Leo as a name. So it was just really beautiful. I love playing live. I'm a performer as well, as much as I'm a singer-songwriter and advocate. Like, I'm a performer. I love to perform. So it's just nice when you're performing to your own people. There is that sense of like, you get what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Pride does have that, it has that special feeling of queer people just coming together and that celebration. So fingers crossed, maybe next year you'll be back on that Pride stage.
I can say much, but you'll see my face. That's all I can say.
I hope so, and we'll definitely be sharing and telling everyone here on My G.
Yeah.
And you also, we've kind of touched on it, as well as a musician, you are a human rights advocate, and that kind of, I guess, interacts with a lot, it comes through in a lot of the music you make, but it's also kind of the work out that you do outside of music. Are you able to tell us a little bit more, I guess, about what that means to you and why that work is so important to you?
Yes, of course. To me, I think it was a natural progression, if I'm honest, in the sense that I say this all the time, but like I am allergic to injustices because obviously as a queer person, not as many as others, obviously, but I endured some of those. And I think we still do when it comes to the music industry because queer baiting is the real thing, and there is a very specific difference between accepting queer people and using them for money, clout, or looking cute for a campaign. So that has to be said. But said that, it's just, I don't know, like for me, it's weird when they ask me this question because to me, it's always like a natural thing. You see something that isn't right, be the change rather than just complain about it. Because I almost found like, complaining about something that isn't right, we end up being like no shade, but we end up being like the Labour Party at the moment, or any kind of like left party across the globe, where they're just criticizing what's there, but not really presenting me with a solid alternative. So I always say, you see something that isn't right, speak up about it, or for better kind of like process to do, read, research, understand if it's your room and place to say it, then say it. If not, I always say this, for example, especially recently, obviously, with Black issues, white people shouldn't have a say in that, period, from my point of view. Like white people do not experience that, but what they can do is find a Black person who has a very similar train of thought to you, retweet, amplify their voice. It's so much better because you're doing two good things. You're researching and educating yourself, so you might end up following that person. So finding a whole new way of resourcing and understanding more about Black issue. And second of all, you're not centering yourself, but you're centering actually a Black person who has a take on Black issues. So that's another thing that, for example, I do. And then just be aware. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I didn't think, like, as white people, for the longest time, we kind of thought that we had the luxury to be blind or to turn the face to certain issues. I think what 2020 has proved that this is no longer possible, besides being wrong, but it's no longer possible. So it's actually our job now to listen to Black voices, to elevate them, and not centering yourself within a narrative or going into the same mistake of thinking of a post-racial society, because the same thing happened when Obama got elected president at the time. People thought like, oh, there you go, we got a Black president, no more racism in the US. And it's like, girl, no. Quite the contrary, actually. So yeah, so when it comes to like advocacy and stuff like that, my suggestion is always like, read the room you're entering in, try and understand, and just be aware about social economic things, because also I think as an artist you should be aware of that. You should be aware of like how the market is going roughly. We don't have to be economists, but like roughly how the market is going, what is going on in certain countries. And especially when it comes to queer people, we have to remember that I guess around 71 countries in the world is still illegal to be queer. So ratioed, like it's still not good enough. So there's much more that we need to do. So I think that just be aware, and I think there's no precise way of doing what I do. I think there is your own way. If you want to look at other people who are doing it to get inspired, go for it, but also know that there is no set way to be an advocate. The most important thing is that you chose a cause, you try to highlight it, you try to do the work, and you just try to make this world a better place, thing by thing, day by day. As simple as that, really.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we all should be using up. We've all been given a voice and different privileges. And if we're not using them to kind of educate ourselves and try and create change, then what are we all doing, really? I definitely agree. As white people, I think we've been misled most of our lives to believe that we always have the right to speak, and we don't. Sometimes what you need to do is shut up and pass the mic along. Before speaking, we should always be asking, am I the right person to be speaking on this topic? Should I be amplifying someone else's voice? And if we all get used to asking ourselves these questions and thinking in this way, I think we can kind of really start to create change and keep this momentum going when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to LGBTQ plus equality, because we've done a lot, but there's so much more still to come.
Right.
So thank you for sharing, all of that with us. And how does so your advocacy work and your music interrelate at times as well? How do you kind of balance that? As well?
I think to me it's like sometimes it's a natural progression when it comes to highlighting certain issues. With the recent music, I've got to say that I've chosen more like a different type of route, because with my past EP Permission, this is what I've kind of like done. I try to kind of fuse different things. So there is, in that EP, you have Bang, which is a song that is more about like a feel-good song and a dance song. But then you got Forbidden Love, which is a very political track about talking about queer love in Russia and sampling like 1973 speech by Sylvia Rivera, "You All Better Quiet Down," which I feel it was like, it was kind of very slept on at the time, and I think it was very relevant to these days, because that sample, Sylvia is basically addressing the cis whitedom of the community, saying, well, I'm here as a trans woman and I'm fighting for your people that are jailed, but you are there doing nothing. And it's kind of like copied to a lot of the reality of like trans support by cis people, especially queer cis people, when it comes to these years, really. Then there is Permission, which is a song about consent within the queer realm, because also that's an issue that I feel like it hasn't been highlighted enough. And when we think about consent, we think most of the time about a heterosexual relationship, man-woman, when realistically there's much to be said about consent within the queer community, as we are very sexual beings, we are very in touch with our sexuality, but there are barriers, and that should be respected at all time, and all type of sexual interaction should be consensual. The moment they are not, they are rape, period. So I've done that, but like now I'm kind of like more trying to kind of like show a different side to me, which is a bit more emotional side, a bit of like an emotional journey, using sounds that come from my, teenage years and my childhood and stuff like that, just kind of like of a different journey. But I'm sure that throughout the path of my career, I'll touch back on those things. I mean, there is one track that is very political on the album, which is actually the track that gives the title to the album, which is Insanely Political. And I kind of limited myself to one track being insanely political. And it's a track that highlights climate change issues. But yeah, so for me, it's just kind of a natural progression. I'm inspired by things that happen inside my life and around me. So without obviously trying to be too cheesy or corny about it, but obviously, as a gender fluid person, so part of the trans community, I feel very dear and close to the trans community. So a lot of things that happen over there are, reason for me to get inspired and write about it.
Definitely. I mean, that makes sense that you would be writing about the things in your environment, whether that's work, the advocacy work that you're doing, or the way that you're seeing kind of your community being treated. And I know that I am going to be looking out for that political track. That's the one I'm going to have on repeat. I can't wait. We're running out of time. So I've seen a few questions have come through to the Q&A. If you have a question that you want answered, pop it in there now. And we will get to them very shortly. I had a few more questions for you that I just will try to squeeze in. I did want to kind of touch on, obviously, we can't not talk about the pandemic. I know everyone's sick of talking about it at this point.
All right.
But the music industry has been hit really, really hard. And I know that we're all really hoping the music industry will be back, because it brings so much joy to everyone's lives. But what can we do at the moment to support musicians that are kind of impacted by this?
So look, this is it's a very controversial and complicated matter, especially just because what I will say is that platforms, without naming names, but platforms that should be supporting us are really failing us. That's what I will say. But when it comes to support, I'll say that the things you can do is stream our music, share it with as many people as you can, and buy our merch, buy our physical stuff on Bandcamp. They're doing like a very cool stuff. I think every second Monday of the month they're doing like a Bandcamp Monday or a Bandcamp Friday. I can remember if it's Friday or Monday, but they do these things where they're incredible deals and they're trying to support the DIY community in that sense. But I'll definitely say that in a time like this, streaming is probably the only way for us to kind of like get some money. So any share with your family, with your peers, with your pals, like signaling the song and putting it onto your playlist, things like this really do make a difference. Bear in mind that we get paid 0.025 cents per stream, which is the harsh reality of what it is. But at the end of the day, this is the playfield that we want to play in. So boom. I'd also say buy our stuff. So I know it's really out of fashion, I'll say, because I'm the first one that like it's hard for me to buy music because I just don't do that no more. But definitely buying gives us a higher rate in terms of payback. And also these days you only need about like 100 sales and you're charting, girl. So that's how low the numbers are. So it's also this, you know, this nice thing. You see like you're charting or something on the iTunes charts, like slow things like this, I think that could really make a huge difference on the long run. And there again, like also if you have, I think most of us have these things that with Spotify, you can donate with us when you land on our profile. You can donate whatever you can. So a $5, a $10, whatever you can donate, it's always good because like it's always important to remember that while we're putting our content, most of the time this content is paid for. There's an economic, you know, force going behind that. And in a day when we don't have any entrants, so any entries when it comes to money, we're still putting that out. So any shape or form that you can help us, please do it. I guess that's the only few ways that we have at this very moment.
I'll make sure to share the link for your streaming platform as well, so everyone can jump on there, because I think we should all be seeking out LGBTQ plus, especially independent artists at the moment, and supporting them however we can. If you enjoy music, then support small upcoming artists is the way forward.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for joining us. We've got we've run over time a little bit. I could keep chatting to you for the next 30-40 minutes though.
Same.
To the Q&A, we'll try and answer a few questions. So I will read them out to you. So we've had one question come in saying, how have you managed to stay creative during the lockdown? Which I think is a question everyone wants to know at the moment.
Yeah, so look, I always say these things. It's like creativity is a process, okay? So it goes through very different phases. Rest is a phase of that. So for example, like I can like use me as an example. This album stuff, I've written it and kind of like closed it beginning of 2020, okay? And I still haven't released some of those. Have I written other tracks? No. Have I written with other people for their tracks? Yes. So do that as well. So sometimes you like writing for yourself, it can be draining. Also, I'm a huge advocate for the fact that you need to live your life to talk about things. And I feel like at this very moment, you talk about being isolated, not being able to see people, like, and as much as you can do that, the perspective around these three themes they can be very, you know, small in a way, because there are as many things that you can say and aspects that you can talk about these things. And of course you can get creative. It's possible to be done, but it's okay also to hold on a second and be like, maybe it's just not right for now. And now I think it's better for me to focus on things that I need to deal with because that might inspire you. Because like that's another thing. I think like this lockdown is a prime opportunity for us to sit with ourselves and be like, let me analyze some patterns and let me analyze how I'll do certain things and kind of have that tough conversation with you. And I think that can spark already inspiration. Or again, like seek to help other people. There's so many artists out there and there's so much music being made on a daily, but ever since lockdown, I had about 4 or 5 songwriting sessions with people and I've written 4 or 5 demos. Am I going to use them? I don't know. Like, also don't pressurize yourself in like, it has to be ready for something. Just do whatever it is. So for example, I also do take pictures. Like I kind of style together some outfits and then I take pictures in my home. I got some like very like basic, cheap, like lighting, professional lighting, studio lighting, and I have fun that way. I do self-care. I read books. I bought a PlayStation 4 for lockdown number 2 because I felt it was appropriate at that moment. But yeah, just like try not to sit with your discomfort a little bit, but also don't let discomfort dictate the way you do things. Like always remember that maybe this day isn't, is not the day to be creative. Next day. And if, just keep on doing that. And eventually you'll realize that it's much more of a construct in your head than the reality. You are creative. We all are creative in anything that we do, So train yourself out of the idea you're not creative or you're blocked. You're not blocked. We are locked in our houses. Like, it's hard to get inspired by anything that isn't like pandemic related,
Definitely. We don't put enough importance on rest as a society in general. I think we are way too focused on that, like productivity is everything, that we forget you can't be productive if you're not resting. I love that you've said that's a very important part of the creative process, because people often forget that. I know I forget that, and we start to feel guilty, but we should never feel guilty for resting. You can't do anything else if you're not looking after yourself.
Exactly.
I'll ask, we've got time for one more question. So someone else has asked, how can we ensure we are increasing diversity in the industry and supporting LGBTQ plus artists?
So what I'll say is that people aren't, like when I say that some people aren't making this easy, it's because we should be more able, it should be easier for us to find us. And sadly, the harsh reality of it is that it's becoming increasingly hard for people to find us. So there has to be somewhat of like a scouting exercise there when it's like, look for them, we are there, but you need to kind of look for us. And once you're tagged with one person, we all help each other. So from one person, you'll be able to kind of like find a bunch of other people and find the community and do that. And when it comes to diversity, I think we have to check in with ourselves. And we have to also have to realize that this whole idea of overachieving things and putting yourself first, yes, but also no, because this whole kind of like super hungry idea of like having to get the next thing, you forget that you are dominating a space, you are dominating a room. And always be mindful of dominating a conversation, because you either lifting community with you, so you're dominating a conversation but you're passing the mic. So if you do that, props to you, because it's fine. You're creating a space and then you're holding it for other people to enter and use it. But obviously careful in doing that. And if you're realizing you're doing that, just pass the mic. Like there's been many situations where there were brands, because this is also thing for brands in a way that some brands are lazy. So they go them to the most successful person, which sadly for the way society is built is most of the time thin, white, and with a lot of makeup when it comes to queer people. And just say, look, this is wrong. This is not for me. Like, I think I remember one time I got asked to talk about Black experiences. And I was like, can you give us your take on Black trans lives? And I was like, what the heck? What I have to do with Black trans life? Yes, I'm a trans person, but I'm white. So how rude of you. So what I replied back is like, go check X, Y, Z and go ask them, because they will be able to give you a perspective that is much more in deep. So I'll say check yourself, check your surrounding. And if you see something isn't right, speak up about it and try to help that person bust through, or like give your platform to that person. If you feel that person isn't being heard, just give your platform out you know, passing the mic is really an exercise, and it's a beautiful thing as well. Like, just imagine that you've, however big your platform is, to feel like you've given something so important to somebody who needs their voice to be heard. Like, how beautiful is that?
So beautiful. I think that's a beautiful note to finish on as well, and something we can all take away. We should all be checking ourselves, because allyship's never done. It's not a tick, we're done. It's something we continually do every day, and we should all be checking with ourselves constantly.
Lifelong commitment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Andrea. The session has been wonderful. I wish we could go on for another hour.
I know, right?
We've already gone way over time. So thank you for everyone else that's stuck with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
No, an absolute pleasure. And like I said, I will link to where to find your upcoming music in the follow-up for everyone. Thank you to everyone that's joined us, whether you've joined on Facebook Live or on Zoom. The session is recorded, so we will share that as well if you want to come back to it. And do remember to go to mydwork.com. You can register for free, create a profile, get access to other events and conversations just like this. Thank you so much to everyone, and thank you, Andrea.